We're going to dig into the Bible now and carry on in our series where we're looking at the whole story of the Bible. We've covered parts 1 and 2, which were creation and the fall. And today we've come to part 3, the Patriarchs!
Okay, so we're in Genesis chapters 12 through 50. And the characters are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph.
Sneaky.
As for the date, it's mainly agreed between people who study the Bible that these events happened between 2200 BC and 1900 BC. And if you can't remember how old dates work, BC basically means before Christ. And we're working forwards to the year 0 BC, which is around the time when Jesus was born. So basically, this was a long, long, long time ago.
Indeed. And as you remember, we left off last week at the Tower of Babel, where humanity tried to show off with a symbol of its own strength, where they all shared one language and worked together to build a tower reaching up to the heavens. But God knew that their confidence was misplaced because humans aren't God. So he humbled them by scattering the people across the earth and confused the language of the whole world.
Okay. Yeah, but what's that got to do with the patriarchs that we're looking at this week, Grace? And by the way, what are the patriarchs anyway? It's a term I've kind of heard, but the only thing it makes me think of is Father Abraham, and many sons.
No. You are not Esther Pry. Oh. Sorry. Anyway, Abraham is not called Abraham at this point. He is called Abram. So, shush.
Fine. Good. Fair enough. But apart from me knowing that about the patriarchs, I'm not sure if I know too much else. So what does the term the patriarchs actually mean?
Well, that's a good question, Clem. The patriarchs in the Bible refers to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, the forefathers of the nation of Israel.
Well, hang on a minute. Nation of Israel? When did that come along? When did that happen?
Well, we read in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 3, "The Lord had said to Abram, 'Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you.'"
So, Abram, who's this guy?
Abram is a descendant of Shem, and Shem is the son of Noah, who is a descendant of Adam and Eve.
Okay. But I was sure he was called Abraham, like Father Abraham, not Abram.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay, anyway, but why does God choose this guy, Abram, to be the father of a great nation and bless everyone? Why not choose somebody else, or even choose a whole load of nations?
Well, it's not about being exclusive by just choosing one person and creating one nation. As God says, all peoples on earth will be blessed through Abram and the nation God will build through him.
Right.
Just as God has a plan for each one of our lives, God chose Abram for this purpose. And again, Abram has a choice. He doesn't have to be obedient to God, because God is asking him to leave his country, his people, his family, the only life he's ever known, for something completely unknown. But as we'll read in verse 4, Abram's character is quite clear. It says, "So Abram went, along with his nephew Lot and his wife Sarai."
But how is one nation going to manage to bless all people on earth?
So we have to remember that God has created us to be in relationship with him, but that relationship has now been fractured, as have our relationships with one another, with the world and with ourselves. We're in quite a bit of mess.
Yeah.
And what we see about the character of God throughout the whole of the Old Testament is that God is constantly giving opportunities to humans to partner with him, to be obedient to his ways. And the ancient nation of Israel is a living reminder to the rest of the world of the fact that God made them. and he wants to be in relationship with them. So you could say that they are the advocates of God to the world. And ultimately, spoiler for part 9 again, Jesus is a descendant of the line of Abraham who will bless the world. But we'll leave that there.
Yeah, no more spoilers, please. So we've got a lot of chapters to get through. Should we hit the fast forward button and pick our way through chapters 12 to 15 and see how the nation began and pick out some of the key bits of the story of the patriarchs? Because at the moment, we've only got Abraham, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot. We only got 3 people, and I don't really call that a nation.
Yes. We read in chapter 13, verse 16, that God promises that Abraham's descendants will be like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted.
Yeah, but Abraham and Sarai don't have any children.
Yet. Why don't you give chapter 15, verse 1 to 5 a read?
Okay. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord God came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son coming from your own body will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the heavens and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be.
So as you can see, Abraham will have children, and their descendants will form this nation that God has promised he will build through Abraham.
But Grace, I still don't see any children yet. No children, no nation.
Patience, Clement, patience. God's promises always stand.
I don't want any more promises. We've had 2 promises so far. I want to see results.
Well, now you're starting to sound a little bit like Sarai and Abraham. Despite God's promises, they were getting old and were probably worried that God wasn't or couldn't deliver on his promise. So they actually have a child through Sarai's servant Hagar.
Ew.
Indeed, this was not God's plan. So we read in chapter 17, God's promise to Abraham and Sarai again. But this time, God lays out a more detailed covenant between God and Abraham and the generations that will follow.
Aha, you just said Abraham. So this must be where the name changes.
Yes, Clem. God says his name will now be Abraham, which means father of many nations. And Sarai becomes Sarah, as she will be the mother of nations. And the covenant is sealed in male circumcision.
Covenant is a bit of a strange word though, isn't it, Grace? I think I know what it means. Isn't it like a really important promise that sets out the expectations between 2 people?
Yes, God promises that he will be their God and that he will make them very fruitful, that many nations and kings will come from them and that he will be with them. They in return promise to be God's people, and as a fleshly sign of this, all the men are to be circumcised.
Yeah, but I still don't see no children here in this story, Grace. Where is the nation coming from? Is it going to come from Ishmael, the child Hagar, or Abraham? Or, come on, Grace, they're almost 100 years old, the pair of them.
Would you read chapter 17, verse 19 to 21?
Yep. Then God said, Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. Finally!
God's promises always stand. Isaac is the second patriarch in the story, and Abraham has been following God faithfully for a long time at the point when God asks him to sacrifice his one and only son, Isaac, to him.
What?
I know, this seems like the craziest request of God to ask of Abraham, but God needs to be sure that Abraham trusts who God really is, one who will provide. He is asking of Abraham nothing more than he is willing to do for the world.
Wow.
The whole story we see in chapter 22 has so many references to Jesus. It's phenomenal. Isaac has to carry the wood for the fire on his back, just as Jesus carried his wooden cross up the mountain. As Abraham is about to sacrifice Isaac, an angel of the Lord calls out to stop him, as it is so very clear that he trusts God enough to be willing to sacrifice his only son. And there in the thicket was a ram. Now, thickets are often very thorny, which reminds us of the crown of thorns Jesus was made to wear. And it's commonly understood that references to rams or lambs are symbols of Jesus in the Old Testament. So the ram is sacrificed in Isaac's place. And there is one more interesting fact about this story. The mountain that they are on will become the mountain on which Jerusalem will be built. And that is where Jesus gives up his life for us.